computer. Okay, wonderful. So Cathy, so this is going to be Q&A, so I'm going to ask some questions and Cathy's going to respond, and you'll all have an opportunity to jump in and ask questions as we go too. So maybe I'll initially just say a wonderful, warm welcome to you, Cathy. Thank you for taking this time to share your knowledge, and maybe I'll hand over to you to share a bit about yourself and what mentorship means to you. We could start there.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I first of all want to acknowledge I'm so grateful that I was present for everybody's introduction. I actually live in San Francisco, California, and the warm introduction made me realize two things. One, it's a very small world, and two, that I'm so glad that there's going to be dialogue in this webinar, because you all have so much to teach me. Everything from your desire to be in community, your desire to communicate, the way that you want to give back, the way that you want to learn something so deeply. So much of what you're already doing is going to be a gift to me. It's kind of like that old story, Stone Soup, where a woman put a stone in the middle of a big pot in the middle of a village to start soup. And she just said, everybody just put in what you have. And the soup ended up being the richest collection that anybody could ever imagine, because everybody who walked by added what they had. And it was the richest soup that anybody could ever imagine. So I look at life these days like Stone Soup. You know, you put in yours, invite everybody else to bring theirs, and then what you get is so much bigger and better than you could have ever done for yourself. And that's kind of the way that my accumulated wisdom has gone on through life. You know, I've managed to stay open. I've been an entrepreneur. Even when I was in a corporate environment, I was an independent contractor. I've never really worried about the glass ceiling that everybody talks about in business, because I always got paid according to what I produced. So there was never any implied pressure put on what I could earn. I knew that it would be a matter of what I was willing to show up and do. And so being the good little girl in the 80s, I learned how to play the game, right? And if any of you are fortunate enough, like me, to be a baby boomer, you know that we had to make it up as we went along. You know, we just made it up as we went along. And one of the things, and I remember succinctly when I started sales in 1980, my job was to pretend to be a guy. I had to wear a blazer with big shoulder pads, right? We had, maybe some of your moms had that. You had big hair and big shoulder pads, you know, and you wore black or blue suits, and your heels were always moderate, and you learned to laugh at jokes that weren't funny, because that's how you got a part of the boys club, and the boys club had more money than the girls club did. So you just learned to play really strange games. It was like Gloria Steinem said, we learned how to be the man we needed to have in our life, right? We just did all that stuff. So we lived under a myth. I believed, I was led to believe a myth that I had to act in a certain way that made everybody else approve me so that I could get what I wanted to get out of business. The idea of just creating something and put it out there was so foreign back in the 80s. It was so foreign. The rules were learn the rules and beat everybody else at it. And that's how I started off in business. And then over time, you learn how sacrificing yourself doesn't necessarily give you a feeling of success. And I'm a good player. I'm a very good player. I love football. I love sports. I love sports analogies. So when guys would get up there, big CEOs would get up there and give analogies about how we're going to do one for the Gipper and run this ball down to the end zone and make it work. And, you know, I was right there applauding it all. It would take a long time that more women would come into it, and I would relax out of role playing. It was a matter of role playing. So those are how I established my rules around business. And it was a far cry. Now, because I was in sales, I had that creative sense, but I knew what I was missing. I knew that sense of connectivity, that sense of community, that that was something that I wanted to have, and not just at the softball game after work. You know, again, in the 80s, you play softball, or I don't know what you were doing in New Zealand, but you'd have ways to like let the steam out. And that would be how you came together in community. But work was never looked at as a state of being in community. It was a state of being part of a team, but not necessarily a community. So, yeah, that was, that's a little bit of the background leading up to this. I'm currently the vice president of operations for a real estate office, for 2 real estate offices. I work in sales and management and coaching and business development for about 60 real estate agents. If you know anything about real estate, you know that's like herding kittens. I manage people that don't want jobs, selling inventory that we don't own. So it's, you talk about creative communication on a regular basis. But I do that as my day job. Natty is helping me launch my core love, which is a women's mentorship group with some women that I met I met them on Facebook. I fell in love with them on Facebook. It's called When Women Speak. And just those 3 words put together just makes my heart sing. The magic that happens when women speak. I mean, the magic that happens when we teach yoga, or we create classes, or we tell people to write their story. I mean, I just love it. And it's, I urge you to look them up on Facebook. They're beautiful 2 women. And I was the first one to start started over here in San Francisco. And it's about giving women a place to hear their voice. And the essence of that is to have women speak themselves into the room. Just speak yourself into the room. Come on in, find your value. My business model is women wise and worthy. Far cry from the woman who used to have to get up, dress up like an IBM executive who wears heels and walk into a room and hope that I didn't bring undue attention to myself. That was always kind of the code. Just don't bring any undue attention to yourself. Stay small. Don't laugh too loud. Don't be too familiar with people. And only say what's relevant so that you're not judged as stupid. And so those were, it's a far cry to where we are today, where we get to speak ourselves into the room and realize how the image, though at one time may have been necessary, isn't going to be what works in the long run. That the essence of who we are is so much more than the image of who we think we have to be. So I hope that doesn't sound too esoteric, but that's kind of what brings me here today.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Great. So how do you define the difference between image management and essence management?
It's interesting because as I sat here and listened to you guys introduce yourself, and it was so beautiful because not too long ago, probably 2000, 2005, the big industry, at least here in America, was branding yourself. Everybody had to brand themselves, right? And if you think of cattle, you think of putting your brand on it. It's like, this is who I am. And your brand has to be part of your elevator pitch, right? You need to be able to say it in the time it takes to go from floor 1 to floor 3 of who you are, what you do, and how you can serve somebody. Those were so your brand had to speak to those external factors in order for you to get hired. So we put a lot of image in that. Where were we going to put our face? What ads were we going to run? What was going to be the 3 words that expressed it? So we were looking to be branded. Our image was going to lead the way. And once we got our image in, then people would buy things from us, make us rich, and give us a really high quality of life. I mean, I guess that's a short story on what a really good brand management would do. So as we went, and being in real estate, I've known people personally that have unbelievable brands and image, but not only would I not let them sell my house, I probably wouldn't let them walk my dog over the weekend. There was a lack of substance behind the brand. So much energy was given into managing what people think of you that we forget about developing the person who's showing up. And so the essence management though it's not meant to be with a degree of psychoanalysis. So sometimes it happens, right? I mean, sometimes we look at why is it so important that I'm looked at as the good girl? Why do I need to be the smart one? Why do I need to be the one with the most competitive edge? What is it about me that makes me think that I have to figure out and fix everything before I can show up in life? I had a coach once who told me that we operate sometimes on 3 basic lies. And by that, I mean a departure from our true essence. And those 3 basic lies are, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, and there's something drastically wrong with me. We all have different variations of that, but there's one that really drives you, one that really, really drives you. And undiscovered, it runs the show. Once discovered, you can dress it out and take it out for church. I mean, it's like, it doesn't have power over you anymore once you discover it. And get friendly with it. Mine was, I wasn't lovable enough. So I had no problem working harder, longer, figuring out the rules of the game and how to beat most people, because then I would be, fill in the blank, more lovable. Some people, and tweaked with not being enough. So if I'm not lovable and not enough, then I'm always going to be trying to get people's approval and trying to get more of something. So when I was able to see that there's a little girl inside of me who thought she wasn't lovable, I had to and I'm not telling you to go into an inner journey, though you may want to, because the reason my book or my webpage that I'm developing, or my website, is Women Wise and Worthy, is because I don't think all of us know how wise and worthy we are. I think we think, if only I was smarter, if only I had more degrees, if only I had more money, if only I lived in a different place, if only I had a better start in life, or if more people liked me, and then I could go do this, or if I felt okay about myself, then I could go do this. So we all have what I've come to know as mice with megaphones inside of us. And those will make us think that we're not good enough as is. So we have to create a persona bigger than us in order for us to be successful.
Yes.
And that development of that persona is where we get exhausted. Go ahead, Natty, you had a question?
Okay. So how does this play out in the role of a mentor or mentee?
Well, I think that the thing that I love about being mentored and working with other women is that it's not for me to diagnose anybody or to be diagnosed by anybody. I was talking to my mentee yesterday, and I said, the only thing people hate more of being told what they're doing is wrong is being told what to do. Seriously, if you start off a conversation with, well, this is what you're doing wrong, and this is what you need to do, they shut you down immediately. And out of courtesy, they listen to you, but nothing gets brought in. But if you're present, really, really present to the person, if any of you are fortunate enough to ever have children, you know that power of, or not fortunate, but went through the experience of having children, you know that power of that burst of life is like, you're present. I mean, you are so present to that. It creates a memory muscle inside of you. And so when you have that kind of crystal presence in anything, whether it be yoga, whether it be writing a story, helping somebody write a story, you can't help somebody write a story if you don't hear what they're saying. So a great deal of that in mentoring is just being present to watch what comes forth, what gets birthed out of that conversation, what is being brought in to the picture that's new. And here's the funny thing, Natty, it's not about the mentor. It's about the mentee having a realization that they've just uncovered something very sacred inside of themselves. It's like, I can't believe I just said that. And in that sacred silence, again, I take it back to the birth room, the two of you, by having a mentor in there with you, you give witness to that. You give witness to that. Like, did you just hear what you said to yourself? Did you just see the significance of that? And that sacred space creates the direction. You know, that's what creates the direction.
Okay. So I'm really keen to explore the how you get into that state as a mentor. And I think it comes back to that, what you touched on earlier, is getting beyond that idea of your image of who you are supposed to play, the role that you're supposed to play as a mentor, and that you are supposed to know, be this particular person in that relationship. How do you move beyond that?
Well, I don't think you move beyond it as much as you just drop the rock. So it's not like there's a place to go to be more present. And I'll, I probably just even last week, if I think about it, or earlier today, possibly even, where I'm more concerned about what you think of me than I am about what you're saying, right? Where I'm on a Zoom call with 40 of my peers worrying, is my hair okay, right? Or so you get, you have these phases of the day where you're more concerned with the dialogue in your own head than you are with the person right in front of you. And not because you're evil, but that's just the way we're wired. We're just kind of wired that way. So by being a mentor, you're really saying, for this specific time, I'm here for you. I'm here with you, and I am present to what's going on. You don't always have to say those words, but if you're of the mind, and if it's something that lends itself to it, then you would do that. I mean, I personally, before we started, I was doing deep breathing exercises. And the deep breathing centers me. And when I'm physiologically centered, I'm more present for you. There's a Heart Math Institute out of California here, but you can go online and find them, and they talk about the energy of the heart and the openness of the heart. I mean, there's ways that you can become willfully present for people, and all the little chatter in the back. And chatter in the back of our brain is a human condition. It just doesn't have to row the boat. It'll always kind of be there. So the idea of being present and dropping the idea of, well, what should I say? And what'll I say so that I can sell her my product? And so I'm going to give her the 7 steps, but I'm only going to give her 5. And then I'm going to sell her the last 2 steps. I mean, there's a great deal of mental manipulation that has to be dropped in order to be present. Oh, and by the way, I'm American. I'm not against money. I mean, I'm serious. So I'm not against money at all. So I'm not, if anything, I tell Natty all the time, it's like, who would you be with more money? Because this isn't, now you could have your altruistic side of you, and I have mine. Lord knows I make money to give money. And so I'm just saying that when you're in a business idea concept, it's not about discounting yourself, because then we're back to one of those original lies, right? Of not being good enough. I'll charge you when I think I'm good enough. I don't have enough experience, so I'm not going to charge for it. So a lot of this presence I'm talking about it sounds woo-woo and all of that, but I'm just saying that that's the value that we bring. If we have a product in mentoring, the product is presence. That's the product.
Nice. Okay, great. So I think maybe I'll take some time to open it up and see if anyone has any other question or any questions at this point in time.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Kath or Cathy.
Mm-hmm.
Kathleen, is that your name, Kathleen?
Oh no, Kathy's fine, thank you. Kathy. And I'm sorry, your name?
I'm Catherine.
Oh, hello, Catherine. Okay, yes. We're very particular about how we say our Kathys, aren't we?
There's so many of us.
I know, so go on.
I found when I was doing some mentorship and I was thrust into that role, and I sort of was thrust into it, kicking and screaming, and I didn't know where to start. But I found that it didn't come naturally, and I had to really, really, really practice. Not practice, but like I had to prepare for every meeting so that I was present. Is that something that changes, or is it something that it depends on the person I know, but I personally.
No, how long have you been doing it, Catherine?
So I was in a role for a long time, but towards the last sort of 5 to 10 years, I can't quite remember. That's how long I was mentoring people. But I don't do it anymore, like in a professional, like in my job. So, yeah.
Well, then I would imagine that maybe some of the mentoring that you felt that you needed to prepare for might have been a little bit more technically oriented or probably job specific, because that level of preparation, I'm sure that and this is an assumption on my part, that you were looking to add value, right? That maybe there was more of a instruction side to what you were doing, to where you needed to prepare so much. Am I right in that analysis?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then there is that, there is that, like I said, the value that we add in being a mentor is being present. And so if part of that presence is the sense of preparation to do that, then you would want to have that done. The real gift of mentorship is a lack of insecurity when you're present. That is something that, however or whenever you get there, is you get there with so much security and comfort in who you are, that you're free to hear what it is that's being brought up. It's different than showing up as a teacher. I've taught too. When I taught, I have my curriculum. And my job is to take this curriculum and pass the information on to the people who came for the curriculum. That's a different type of thing than mentoring. I look at mentoring as being a midwifery, bringing forth. I don't really do any of the heavy lifting, and I have nothing to do with it when it leaves, but I'm right there in the middle of the process, helping people bring ideas, their best ideas, to play. So
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and I'm just interested, Catherine, in your new form of mentorship. What role is it that you feel what is your value that you're bringing into that you feel currently?
I suppose just a bit of life experience, being in challenging situations and being able to overcome them. But I have to say, after I'd done the mentorship with my old job, I actually really enjoyed it, because I saw people thriving and becoming these amazing people. And yeah, it's hard work, but it's very, very, very rewarding, and just to see them bloom, that's what I like about it, and that's why I'd like to do it again, to help people, want to help people.
Okay, and I'm going to say something, and it's not, what do I say? It's not necessarily the ideas of the sponsor of the program, but I'm gonna throw something out there that was a key turning point for me in my coaching, and not so much mentoring, but coaching. And that was when the coach who was coaching me told me, it's not about you. He just said, it's not about you. And because I was so getting into being prepared to be over prepared to bring value, to make change, to figure things out and fix it. And in one fell swoop, I felt the weight of the world fall off my shoulder. It's not about me. And when I learned that for myself, I was more connected to the person and not to the situation, or not to what I thought I had to do to make them change. Because here's another thing about mentoring, and it's very against the grain, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But for me, mentoring is not about being figured out and fixed. I'd never once figured out Natalie and fixed her. I never said, here's your diagnosis, here's the description of what I think you need to do different, and here's a prescription by which you need to follow in order to get better. So when I'm mentoring, I don't figure out and fix. I create a place where we come up with ideas that we may not have thought about had we not spent time together. And I don't even know what those ideas are going in. So, and believe me, I've got more books, textbooks, libraries. I've read everything from theology to psychology to resonance to the beginning of quantum physics. I mean, I've read it all, and I put all of that aside to be open to what's unfolding in front of me. Does that make a little bit of sense, Catherine?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. It's it's like, I agree. It's trying to, I think the part of it is listening, and sometimes just letting them have space to think, and then they come up with something, and it's like boom, and you're like, oh my God, that's amazing, and then just helping them realize it.
Yeah.
Great. We've got a question just actually to the whole group from Ocean, and it's, so Cathy, you mentioned breathing as a way to center yourself. Do you and anyone else in the group have any other examples of how to get yourself in a good state before going into the mentor session?
Well, I can't imagine anybody having a better start to this today than Trudy, who just ended her yoga session right before she came in and talked about the zen of it all. So Trudy, you want to share some of your insights around that?
Yeah, you probably don't have to do a whole yoga class, but there's some very simple breathing techniques that you can do to help calm you down that fit into Kundalini yoga. And the most simplest one is just blocking off your right nostril with your hand like this, and just taking deep breaths in through your left nostril, because that's calming your nervous system down. And you can just do that for a few minutes if that's all the time you've got. Or you can just sit quietly meditating. Your brain's never going to switch off, but it's just good to calm yourself. If all you've got is a few minutes, just to close your eyes, sit still, put your hands in Gyan Mudra, put them on your knees, just take a few deep breaths if that's all you've got. But if you can do some yoga at home, then that would be really good, or a meditation. There's some awesome stuff on YouTube. There's some really good Kundalini yoga teachers on YouTube. But I think having that moment, taking a bit of time to breathe and just connect into yourself would definitely help you be present, and help you just bring your essence. And then with all the knowledge that we've acquired over the years, I guess the pieces of that knowledge will just come through that essence when needed. You don't have to necessarily rehearse anything, but always keep reading. Like I've been thinking about what I might need to do just to keep an eye on what's going on in the New Zealand market at the moment, out there, and with everything being shut down, that my mentee may be a little bit worried about work opportunities and things like that. So I'm just been thinking about ways that I would research what's going on in the economy. So I've got pieces of information that I can bring forward if the conversation goes that way.
Yeah. Thank you, Trudy. And I know that, it's Heart Math Institute. There's some beautiful free exercises there that talks about, and the Heart Math Institute, they do the science of the energy of the heart going out. And so it has been an unbelievable resource for me in understanding that love, or the energy of your heart, is contagious, that it ripples out, and that there's ways that you can settle into that so that your energy can come from that. So the deep breathing, which I'm huge on that, I do, my ideas of naps are 15 minutes of transcendental meditation, of just slowing my whole body down. At 62, I have 107/64 blood pressure because I've learned how to slow my body down. My mind, I've always have to work on, but my body, we've learned to kind of slow the body down so that it can be engaged and grounded. And so it's not something to overlook. It's not a point to overlook. There's a necessity to feeling that. So breathing and centering, and even the preparation that Catherine talked about in many ways. And I don't want to sound all fun and funky, but you kind of rehearse success in your mind, like, where do I, how, like getting ready for this, where do I want to be, how do I want to be present, what's going to be comfortable, what, and so I don't hijack, I don't ambush myself any more than I need to. I'm open and spontaneous, and at the same time, you know what to prepare for so that you can be confident. So
I think one of the things that you told me right at the beginning, because so when we had our first session, I came in with this plan of how I was going to get better at communication, this extensive plan, and one of the things that you told me was, you know, for you, because Cathy is also an exceptional speaker, is like, for you, the thing that you do is the number one success metric for you is just showing up on time and feeling prepared.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All the other stuff if you can do those things, then it's a success. And like, for me, that was I thought that was just such a beautifully, you know, everything, if you can just knowing that and thinking about that, everything else sort of falls into place, because you're not really overcomplicating things at all. You're just showing up and feeling prepared. And I thought that was just a beautiful learning for me around communication that flows into all areas of life.
Yeah.
And so then, exactly as you said, I dropped all this idea of who I had to be as this communicator, and it was just really transformational for me.
Well, the thing about over management or over is the emphasis on over means that we try to cram as many things into it to get it ready. The myth of being able to multitask, as if multitask is a gift we give the world, and multitasking is a form of, you know, an aggravated sense of showing up. It's like, because you're never really present. If I was here and managing what was for dinner and where was going on and what, you know, looking at this and managing what I was going to do after that, I wouldn't be here. The whole sense of presence is annihilated in multitasking. But yet we elevate busyness to a form of being efficient. And so when we can keep it simple, the essence of our self, when we show up, just not being fragmented into all the things we thought we had to cram into place. And I don't speak theoretically, ladies. I mean, I speak from a historical standpoint of my huge capacity for life. I thought it was up to me to be overprepared and overburdened with stuff. And I say I was never really suicidal. I was more, you know, somebody else was going to go down, not me. I mean, I was, you know, my job was to overdo everything. And so when I learned how to, and I wouldn't get depressed, I'd get exhausted. So my form of falling out of the game wasn't from sadness or depression. And it's not that and I know they're both very real. Mine was exhaustion, stressed out, mean to people I love type of over cramming and over preparing. So I don't come about this because I read a sweet article in a meditation magazine. This isn't a theory that I just said, oh, that looks like it might be fun to try out. I literally learned the hard way. It's a better way to live. So go on.
So Kim also recommended that you could use affirmations before going into a session. Did you want to? Yeah.
It could be, you know, and it depends, because I'm a huge Louise Hay's fan. I mean, I loved affirmations, loved them. But sometimes what you're affirming is the image. And I just want you to be careful about that, because sometimes what we affirm and over affirm is the image we want to project. I would say what I can now look at is when I'm affirming anything, my affirmation is I'm loved, I'm loving, I'm lovable. I'm loved. It just strips away all the need to overdo things. So the affirmations that you choose, please make sure they resonate with the deepest part of you rather than the person you feel you have to be in order to be happy, right? When I don't have money and sit there and say, I affirm I'm the richest person in the world today. I affirm it. I'm not really dealing with the core part of where it could change, which is I am worthy. I am worthy of greatness, and my energy matches with my resources. My energy and my resources are one. So the affirmation, when it comes from the deepest part of you, of your worth and your wisdom and your innocence, they'll be more likely to help you craft change instead of make things happen. So.
Right. Did you, maybe Kim, did you, you actually sounded like you had quite a few good recommendations too. Did you want to share them?
Oh, I was just going to share my experience that I've had with my local yoga teacher. She is really into yoga nidra, which basically is sleep, which I love. And it's really about bringing your body into a state of relaxation, because usually, especially when we're stressed, our body is always in that fight or flight mode from, like, you know, way back when humanity started. So it's about trying to, like Cathy was saying, slow down your body, relax your body, allow it to just be. And the easiest way that she tried to teach us is, like, if your out breath lasts longer than your in breath, it automatically helps. What's it called? The vagus nerve, something?
Yes, yeah.
It helps to relax the body. So that's kind of what I do when I feel stressed, or when I'm like, yesterday I had a day meeting to meeting to meeting, like literally less than 10 minutes in between meetings, because they were all on Zoom. And in between the meetings, I would just do a couple of breathing sessions to just kind of like relax myself and not allow myself to really get caught up in the stress of, you know, preparing in between each meeting. And that's been really good. And then I use the affirmations, like on the in breath, I say things that I'm open to receiving. So such as like, I am loved. And then the out breath is things that I am giving. So for example, I am kind. So things like that, that's how I kind of help to center myself. And by forcing myself to say the things in my mind, it forces my breath to last long enough, if that kind of makes sense.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I do. And I'm like, one of the sentences that I really like that she taught us is, peace flows in me, peace flows through the entire body. And because there's so many like extra words in the second sentence, it forces your out breath to be longer. And that's like the simplest way that she could teach us to get used to a longer out breath than your in breath.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And, you know, I just have to say, you get to a point where you just, I mean, the physical body is a magnificent miracle. I mean, if we just even acknowledge just take that time to honor it, like Kim said, through breathing or through movement or through rest, I mean, it will do for us 100 times more than what we give it. And we women, we got stuff around our body. We got stuff, and you know, we don't have to go into that. That's I mean, whether it be body image or pain bodies or whatever, because we're so, I mean, my gosh, we can create life with this mechanism. I mean, it's a magnificent, magnificent thing. So as we honor it, I think that in and of itself gives us a state of presence that elevates our giftedness to the world around us, you know, whether it be through helping people write their story or creating a new website. When we honor who we are physically through rest and relaxation, we show up differently in the world. So yeah, it matters. It's all together.
Great. Before we move on to connecting one to many, because I thought I just actually have one other question, and that's it's around being in a mentor-mentee session and how so maybe I'll share from my perspective or my experience. You can feel when you go into that state of flow, and it's quite when you're just really being present, and it's sort of when it's much less structured, and much less, you know, and so sometimes I feel like there's this sort of resistance to, because it's sort of this scary, you have this wisdom that comes through, and it's usually the outcome is really, really good, but it's also you have this period where you sort of, I anyway resist it a little bit, because you're not sure whether you're going to say the right thing, and I guess that comes back to the image management. side, but what can you talk to that or share how you let yourself get into that state of really being in flow with your mentee and connecting at the level of essence rather than image?
Okay, and if the question varies from the answer, please reroute me on this, Patty. Okay. So what I would I'm going to go general and then come specific. Every relationship is an invitation or an ultimatum, right? So when we look at invitation or ultimatum, you know, it's like sometimes we enter into, and we won't call them ultimatums because that sounds so harsh, and we're much nicer than that. So let's just say that I have an agenda, and my agenda is get Natty to buy this prescription that I have for her that's going to make her better. So I have an agenda on that. I have a lot of preparation to do in order to reroute whatever it is that shows up into the room back to where I want it to end up. So in essence, it is kind of an ultimatum because I have an agenda that needs to be met, right? Mm-hmm. So when I drop the agenda and I show up, and back to what Catherine was saying earlier, and you said as well, prepared with what? With my life experiences. Prepared with, well, what else qualifies you besides your life experience? My willingness to be present. Okay, well, what else allows you besides your life experiences and your willingness to be present? And that is creating a sacred space. Now, I keep using that word sacred, and I don't mean religious. I mean set out sacred, that you've created, you've carved out a time and place to where you're going to be present with this individual. And so that is it. The key thing is thinking that you're not prepared. That level of self-consciousness and that level of insecurity of like, I need to do one more thing. I even thought about that getting ready for this. It's like, oh, I better listen to one more podcast about this. Or oh, wait a minute, where's that book that has all those characteristics of essence that I want to bring out here, you know? And so I was even looking for like one more thing I got to add to that. And because then you guys will love me more when I'm that much more prepared. And so I had to even drop that rock. It's like, okay, just you're good. You're good. You've done this. And to tell you the truth, I kind of put the burden on Natty. It's like, okay, you want to invite me, you know who I am. I'm here for you all. And if you think what I have brings value, Natty, then I'm all over it. So that's it. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely. Thank you. So we have another question from Persin. So it's in a mentoring session, how do you step back and not give the solutions, but create an atmosphere where the mentee comes up with the ideas themselves? So Persin, did you want to explain that question?
Yeah, sure. So this is my first time kind of being a mentor. So it's all kind of really new to me. And I had one of my first sessions, and when we were having our conversation, it kind of felt like, and having been in a small business myself, I kind of get where my mentee was coming from. It was kind of like, I've done XYZ things in my business. Now, what else can I do to, like, you know, grow sales or grow revenue? And I found myself very quickly stepping into execution mode and giving answers. And I know that that's ideally not what I should be doing, and I should just kind of be coaching and you know, creating a space where the ideas can come from the mentee themselves. But how do you kind of go about creating that atmosphere, especially when the mentee, or it feels like the mentee is just kind of wanting, you know, like tactics or ideas? How do you kind of take that step back in the conversation and be like, well, why don't you tell me what's
right
next?
Right. And I appreciate that, because I know that there's plenty of times where people are like saying, here, you figure it out and fix me and tell me what I need to do. And there's a lot of times where I feel valid because I do have an answer. It's like, do this and do that. And then they look at me and say, but I don't want to do that. You know, I want to do this. And so it is kind of a shortcut to be able to just prescribe something. I would have to say, and I started with you initially, you breathe into what's being asked of you. You know, you kind of breathe in, and then what I heard you asking of me, and, you know, I'm telling you verbally what I'd say. I wouldn't say this if I was coaching you, is you want me to give you an experience because that's all we can really share, Prasan, is our experience, is to share with me an experience of when I went through that. And so case in point, I was talking to my mentor yesterday, and we were talking about things, and I don't know how we got to an answer where we both liked, but we did creatively. I didn't have a list of techniques for me to get there. I just knew that by being open and listening and keeping the dialogue alive, and rather than making it a monologue, we ended up coming up with an idea that worked for that particular situation. So I'm not saying that your experience doesn't matter in a mentor-mentee relationship. I'm saying that in a mentor-mentee relationship, that you both have to take responsibility for what's being shared in the room. Does that make sense? So you're not really telling her what to do. You're seeing if that works.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think for me, the biggest learning is because I tend to go into execution mode myself. It's about just learning to kind of take that step back and, like you said, repeating. So you're asking me to do, what I would do in this situation, and this is what I would do, but then putting the ball back in their game. Putting the ball back in their court.
Kind of, and without the technique, because that's one thing. I don't know if any of you ever studied NLP, where you go through the different body languaging, there's a lot of strategizing in NLP that actually creates a sense of disconnect. But one of the things that, so it's like, well, what, where you mirror back to the person, well, what I hear you saying is this, 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 and this. And though that is a bit of a can opener where people say, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And then you hit them with what it is you want to give them because you've opened them up. They've agreed with you. There's a little bit of manipulation in that. What I use is, it sounds to me as if, and then I say what the experience I just had, rather than reinterpreting what I heard. I say, it sounds to me as if, and then I share the experience. And when I've had that experience, so you see how that's coming from you on you, that you'd hope would benefit them rather than you telling them what to do.
Yeah, sorry, yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's just kind of that creation is in the middle of the relationship. It's not as a result of you telling somebody what to do. It's just you sharing your experience and your interpretation at the time.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that.
That's great. And I guess I guess maybe the mentee is also showing up and thinking that they need to have a list of things, and it just makes me think about the guides that we've created, and I think we should build more of what we've discussed today into it. It might also be that the mentee feels that that's the image or the role that they have to play to get the most out of the relationship.
Well, yeah, a lot of it is like moving lounge chairs on the Titanic, right? It's like, if you're just worried about, I got to do this different, I got to do that different, and you never really get down to the experience a person is having. One of the greatest things a mentee can bring to the table is a feeling around an experience. When this happens to me, I feel, when the market drops, when I'm, to have them bring their experience to the room gives you a more, a deeper beginning. It's like, okay, let's start with that. Talk to me about this experience you're having, because this experience will be more reflective of their holistic self, rather than give me your P&Ls, send it all over ahead of time. I'm not your accountant. I don't want to see all of your spendings for all of last year so I can figure out what your net worth is. That's not the role you're playing as a mentor-mentee. And so you start with the experience that you want to share. And then that will help create a deeper level of connection from there.
That's really good. Maybe this is also sort of sharing what happened with Cathy and I is also quite relevant, because that's what I did in the first session. I came in with this list of things that I wanted to do, and then you really just diffused that by making. How did you diffuse? I guess over the period, it just became, when we had the sessions, it was really like that. So how are you feeling? What's happened? That was the beginning of the conversation, and then our mentor sessions were just really about what I was feeling and why at that point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. That makes sense. Gonna try that out.
Cool.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I really like this idea of because it was something that I did on my mentoring session earlier this morning, where I repeated back what she said, or what I said is, what I'm hearing from this is XYZ, is that correct? But I like the idea of changing it to the experience. Can you give me more of an example in a context of a subject that you would be talking about, just so I can put it from the concept into the into play?
Okay, so 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 I was talking to a woman. I'll be specific. I was talking to a woman yesterday, and she was, her business is offline. She has an online business that sells things, and the people who she sells it for aren't doing that. And so the idea of working harder longer wasn't going to work, right? So what became the concept was, what brings you to this career or job, or this, what brought you here, what led you here? And in that unpacking of what led you here, then you're just not acknowledging what you heard, you're acknowledging the full story, Christine. So let's just say I came to you and I said, I can't stand it anymore. I'm not making enough money. I need to figure out what I'm doing wrong, right? And you would say, okay, well, let me see your bank account. Here, go apply for this job, and we'll figure, let's change all of these outside things.
Yeah.
As a mentor, you would say, whoa, what brings, why are we starting there? What's going on? And then I would go into that, and then between you and you wouldn't even need a script. Between you and I, we'd wake up to what would be my next step. And so it's not so much of what I hear you saying, it's, and I don't even know if you can put words to it. It would first be share a little bit more about that. Give me a little bit more insight as to why this is happening. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I would just start from where I start. It's been my experience, and then I would fill in the blanks. It's been my experience and then you would share your experience, and then you'd come up with your collective agreement on that. Again, I'm not big on figuring out and fixing people. When I ran a huge office, I used to tell my people, I have 3 children and you look nothing like them, so, and they teach you techniques and sales manager of how, when you see the really needy ones come walking in, you'd learn to stand up and walk around with them rather than letting them camp out in your room. I mean, there's all kinds of things, because people want to be figured out and fixed. Yeah. And when you enter into a mentee relationship, you can clearly define what the relationship is for by the way that you conduct yourself in it, is to help them overcome their own obstacles. Does that make a little bit more sense?
Yeah, definitely.
It's more of a sense of, we talked about being physically grounded. It's kind of about being grounded in your heart. Like, oh, okay. And then you get to be there with that.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
That's great. Wonderful. Okay, so now I thought it would be good to just move to take this opportunity to talk about connecting one to many, just Cathy, because you're so wonderful at public speaking. How does what we've talked about there, or how does the idea of connecting through essence apply when you're speaking to a group of people?
Well, I would have to say the undoing of image management is overcoming fear. I say when we aren't afraid, we show up differently. Think of all the things you love to do and how you get excited about showing up. When we're afraid, we show up with hesitancy, uncertainty, doubt. We feel bogged down. The light in our eyes aren't shining as brightly as they are when we're joyful. And so in overcoming public speaking, and I used to be a coach for Dale Carnegie, and I'd work with these corporate giants back in the 80s who never wanted to stand in front of their group and give a story because they were so afraid. And this comes back to, I read an article once and it blew me away. The fearful, the thing that some people fear the most out of all the things in life are humiliation. Humiliation. Humiliation will reroute a person and cripple a person. And of course, the aggravated forms of humiliation are shame, guilt, and fear. That things that make us want to shrink and hide from ourselves. So the only way to really is to look at this fear of humiliation and realize it really has no bearing. It has no bearing. I heard this early on, and I'm going to preface it with this. 80% of the time people give you statistics, they're making it up. So I will tell you that 78% of the people that watch you when you're giving a public speaking want to see you succeed. Most people want to see you succeed because they see themselves up there. If you know that at the beginning, you'll know that you're being a gift to them by showing up with grace and confidence and poise. Even if you don't package yourself, it's about the authenticity that you're willing to put out in front of people. Most people want to put that authenticity into the world themselves. And so by you giving yourself permission to be that person, other women, other people are giving themselves permission to step into that role in their own life. And this goes back to that core, what I said reroutes people is the core lie, because the core truth is we all need to be seen and heard and recognized as valuable. And when we can give that gift of ourselves to others, it allows people to see that their own giftedness in themselves. When they can see their value, when they can hear their beautiful voice, and when they can understand that they make a difference, people show up in the world a little differently. So that's where the one-to-many is the understanding that, sure, there's bouts of humiliation, and I love Brené Brown and her science around shame. And she's brought it to the forefront to say, we're not different because we feel awkward. We just need to know there's more to us than that. So.
Great. Am I still on mute? Wait.
No.
Okay, that's good. Okay. That's wonderful. Does anyone have any questions on that topic?
Yep, I do. If that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So I love all those ideas, and I can definitely resonate, because I would say humiliation and public speaking is an area that I do not, or that I struggle with. So I guess I'm wondering, what is the how behind the idea? So to understand that that humiliation is the thing that we need to work on or overcome, how do we go about doing that? Is it through practicing public speaking? Is it through continuously putting yourself in those areas of fear or unknown?
Yeah, it's both.
Is that essentially it?
What's one of the hobbies that you love to do when you're allowed to go outdoors and do everything you love to do? What are some of the things you love to do?
I love yoga and hiking in nature.
Was there ever a time that you were awkward and inadequate at yoga and hiking in nature?
Yes, many.
What has given you to where you went from awkwardness to love?
So with yoga specifically, I would say it's accepting that the way that I do it is perfectly okay, and it doesn't need to be compared to other people, and it's just me and the mat, and nothing else matters.
And the hiking?
That it's okay to get puffed when you're hiking, and it's a natural thing. And again, no one's listening to you puffing. They're probably puffing just as much as you are as you're hiking up there.
And I have one of my greatest mantras in life is anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly at first. And so there's the idea of taking on something new and doing it. And public speaking, when you really, let's just say, especially this is why I love when women speak, the idea of what you don't have when you're not doing it is sad. And I'm probably old enough to be a lot of your guys' moms, and so I keep deferring to when I was in my 20s, or even before that, children were to be seen and not heard. Don't bring too much attention to yourself. Who do you think you are? All those things that put a lid on my creativity, my sense of community, my need to collaborate, my ability to see a big picture and share that big picture. All that sharing that doesn't happen when you have these, in my world, I call it an 8-track cartridge tape that I put in, you know, it's an old tape that doesn't have any meaning now. Overcoming, if public speaking is people's greatest fear, which I don't believe it is, but it's one of them, then what a gift to yourself to overcome that. And so that's the first invitation, is who would you be without this? Most people, now many years as I've taught it, it wasn't until 2 weeks ago that I started listening to the sound of my own voice, because we don't want to hear our voice. Our what's that word? I call it mouse with megaphone. Freud calls it something. Our inner critic has way too much protein drinks in the morning. So our inner critic is louder than our voice to express. So we have an inner critic that we'll call common sense. We have society that looks like it's putting a lid on things. And then we have our desire, and our desire is like list number 89, right? Because the inner critic takes up 1 through 38. So when we push the inner critic lovingly out of the way, and we say, okay, so I'm going to get through this, because here's the thing, walking through your fear of public speaking isn't the end of the game. It's actually the beginning of it. That's where your leadership from 1 to 300, your service from 1 to many, everything begins when you're ready to be out there with what you're doing, right? So yeah, I mean, but it took me, my coach said, hey, Cathy, you need to do Facebook Lives. It's like, oh my God, but my wrinkles, my hair, how do I re-edit it? You just got to get out there. And it's like, and on When Women Speak, we have a Friday short share. And I have to, they tell me, Cathy, speak yourself into the room. And what am I doing? I don't know. I guess I'm becoming more authentic. And so the 1 to many is the overcoming of kind of like a part of human nature that people think they have to live with. And that's not true at all. You don't have to. It's going to open so many other doors for you.
I have so many questions, but I don't want to keep hijacking the call. So
call me afterwards, because I'd love to. Okay,
yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, it's 3:20. Or 3:20 my time. I lose track of New Zealand. You guys are on your own. I would like to say something though before we come to wrapping it up, because one, I respect all of your time, and I know that wherever you are in the world, it's Saturday, and so you've got other things to do besides being inside. Well, maybe not, huh? maybe we don't have other things to do rather than being inside. But I know that this is such a time that is so ripe for, I don't want to, it's the word that's being overused up here is unprecedented times. So I look at the unprecedented times, and rather than making it a sound bite, it'll be like days that this whole planet have never, an experience this whole planet has never gone through before, and yet we went through it all together. And if that isn't the beginning of a new beginning, I don't know what is. What I have found is that because of the lack of activities for me to participate in, the ones that I do are so beautiful. It took a while. It took me to day 12 to see the beauty and the silence of the gaps. Just there's so many more gaps now. And there's so many reasons to be present that we'd be cheating on something else that had a higher value in our life if we were present for everything we're available to be present for now. But now we're really, really present. And that gives us, and the tide has gone out. So we start seeing things differently, our relationships, our love, our way that we talk to ourselves and one another. And so it's like this particular time of being present for one another in mentor and mentee relationships, of facing your own little mice with megaphones inside of yourself, and just say, give me that megaphone. We're going to coexist, because you're always going to be human. You're going to coexist with your mice. And I want to mix my metaphors a little bit here. You'll always have a tail of the dog, but the dog doesn't have to be run around by the tail. You'll always say, this is me being insecure. This is me not wanting to show up. This is me blowing off this group. This is me, you know, this is me rolling my eyes at my life partner who's telling me the same story again. You know, it's like we're always going to be in human form, so we don't have to pretend that there's something wrong with that. And we're going to understand that our life doesn't have to be run by the tail anymore, that we can do things differently now. So that's my monologue at the end.